Wow, it's been a long time.
Everyone had to wait for me, so.
Becky?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm in with both.
So if I make you the co-host, which one would I do? The one with the video?
The one with the laptop would be the best one.
It doesn't show any video or anything.
It won't, because there's no video on that particular computer.
Okay.
Oh, and my video just fell. I need to run upstairs to get my charge. Hang on 1 second.
Okay. Hi, Jim. Where's Dan?
Good evening.
Hello. Hi, Bruce.
Okay, there we go.
I haven't seen you guys for a long time.
There we go. All right. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Right. Oh, I see. So Becky, you made my laptop the co-host, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I have more control there. My phone, I haven't figured out quite how Zoom works as a host yet on there.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
All right. What time is it? 1 minute. Oops. Uh-oh.
okay,
I did something. Oh, back to meeting. There we go. Okay. There we go. All right. So we made maybe another minute. Becky, do you see other people popping on?
I think it's Dan. Is Dan Hayes there? I just sent
Oh,
him.
there you are.
There he is. Okay, good. I think Dan is in the end the school committee. Oh, Jen, the superintendent is here.
Yep.
Yeah, I know this, the school committee, a number of members had conflicts with tonight. So
Okay.
Dan is here and he's also the chair. So that's wonderful. And we also have the superintendent and the principal.
I see that. Okay.
So, and Jackie too. So,
All right, should we get started?
Do we need to call ourselves in order again?
Yeah, well, I don't think the select board has to, but the finance committee, and I don't think the school committee has a quorum, so it's the finance committee.
Yeah, the finance committee, all 7 members are here, present, so we can call our meeting to order.
All right,
I'm
all
gonna
right.
make, both, I'm gonna see if I can make all 3 chairs co-hosts.
Okay,
If that sounds reasonable. Okay. Oh, laptop. Okay, so I guess you don't have to be waiting for me to do that. You guys can jump in.
okay. All right. I was just looking for getting the thing up on my screen with the budget, but that's okay. I'll go back to that after. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for coming and joining us all. It's good to see everybody's faces, even though we're on Zoom and not in person. Maybe one day we will get back to that. But anyway, thank you all for coming. And this is our annual budget meeting with the school, so they can give us information and such. Who would like to start us down that path? Yes, no.
Or
Um,
finance committee, or what do you think, Becky?
Typically, I mean, we're going to be reviewing the budget, and the question is whether that should be put up online.
I can put it up when I can, if I find it. Becky, when did you send it to us?
It was, I think on January 5th.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't go back far enough. I had popped it open today and then.
Yeah. And then,
Melissa, I can pop it up if you'd like also. We can,
Yeah, is it
Oh,
the November 19 version?
yes.
Okay, we got that.
Changed since then.
That was sent to us the
If you'd like to-
12/31.
If Bruce, if you'd like to pop it up, if you're going to be the one talking primarily to it, it might be easier if you're in it and scrolling us through it.
Okay,
And is that
Um,
the most recent budget?
let me see if I can get it to work for me.
okay, and I made you a co-host, so it should work okay.
Okay,
I wonder if there's a limit on how many co-hosts. We now have 4.
I don't believe so, Becky. At least in my experience at work, I don't think so.
Looks good.
Oh, there it is. Beautiful.
am I sharing?
Yep.
Okay, so even though this is the November 19th, this is still the version we are working with tonight, so let me see if I can get it to work here. Okay. The biggest drivers, of course, is still salaries, as you can see from this. Some of our fixed charges and things like that are U28 related. And when we get into the presentation, we'll talk about that a little bit. So let's see, let's start right from the top there.
Jeff, just a quick question as we get into this, being this is the November 19 version, is there anything significant that's happened since this would have been put together that we should be, that you'll highlight or point out that?
There is nothing
Okay,
changed. We haven't even discussed it at the school committee level, because as you see, when we get to the end, we're proposing right now a 1.59% increase to the budget. The main budget. There's a couple items we haven't discussed yet, and we'll talk about that as far as revenue sources and getting down to the bottom line. But as you can see, your proportional share of the U28 budget is actually less this year than it has been or was last year. That's why you see some negative numbers here. And really for the administration, it's salaries, and it's $3,000 increase or 2.5%. The next we'll look at is instruction here. Basically some staffing changes, not significant. COLA increases, and because the last year's teacher contract didn't settle until after we did the budget, there's actually some savings in the current year's budget that actually is reflected in this year's budget that reflects a smaller number for the salaries. So that's why the salary increases are actually not that significant this year because of where I budgeted last year and where the contract settled at. So, and then we have a new psychologist, and that's saving us $11,000 there. And basically the only, this is the biggest increase, the instructional portion, and that is $31,000. The other school services, a nurse, COLA and steps, and the food service, we try to keep up with that as we supplement the budget every year, and we're trying to I just try to keep up with it and maybe even get ahead a little bit so we're not using other funds that to offset the costs. So, and then as you can see in the next portion there, the plant and operations, the salaries are increased there. But as you can see down on the lower side, the savings is we no longer have a central office that we are supporting. The central office is now in each school building, a portion of us, so we don't have a custodian. The phone we actually still have, but we're looking to save a little money there. And that's basically it there, your proportional share. Your proportional share of the central office rent is, we were paying $6,000. Your share would have been $1,800 this year. That's a complete savings because we're not renting space anymore for our central office. So, and everything else is basically level funded. We're not looking at any out of district placements or any special needs items. So here we are, bottom line, total budget, $37,107 increase or 1.59%. And then I'll just go to the next page, and this is line by line if you want to really look at it, but it's basically the last items we talked about. Salary increase is $8,000 for the teachers, and teacher aides, there's a little shift there. That's like one aide moving from regular aid to special needs or a half an aide. So psychologist salaries reflected there and some U28 savings. And then the nurse's salary and the food service and everything else gets us to a bottom line of, like I say, 1.59. Right now, projecting basically the same amount of income from grants, the early childhood revolving. I've reduced it this year only because of a little bit of concern for where we fall this year in relation to next year. So, and then at the bottom, I budgeted last year rural aid. We actually have that money sitting in a bank account. I'm thinking because of some contractual savings we had this year and some other items, we may not need to use that this year. So I'm putting it in the budget for next year. If we can't roll it into next year, I think discussion that the school committee hasn't had yet, but asked or I've talked with them about it, is using some school choice money to offset the loss of rural aid if we don't get it. So right now, that brings us to a bottom line of 2.15 or $47,107 to the town, so. And I'll stop there and. take
Okay.
questions.
Thanks, Bruce.
Questions, anybody? I'm just moving my thing so I can see.
Bruce, would you mind just repeating or clarifying the point about the rural aid? Like this always trips me up every time this subject comes up. So it was received in a prior budget year and is being held.
Last fiscal year,
Mhm.
2020, the state legislature appropriated, we got like $32,000 of rural aid. And it was initially planned to be used in the year in which it was allocated.
Mhm.
The state legislature last year, because of all the craziness that was going on, allowed us to roll that into this year, into the FY 2021 budget. Well, because of the fact that we haven't been in school regularly this year, we've had significant budget savings. And if we have to use it in the budget year now, all it will do would go back to the town as free cash. So if we can roll it into next year's budget, which I'm hoping we can, it's actually, we have received the money. The money is sitting in a Shutesbury special revenue account. If we can roll that into next year and be allowed to use it next year, that would offset next year's budget. I'm
And do
recommending
we
use it in
know
the-
if the state will allow us to roll it over
Well,
for another
that's-
year?
That's something we need to maybe get some help with from our legislators, but right now we have it sitting in an account.
Got it.
And by the way things are falling out in this year's budget, we will not be needing to supplement our budget with it. So I'm hoping we can get some help or just kind of just do it. I don't know. So,
Got it.
because all it would
Thank you.
do is roll into free cash if we had to, if we couldn't use it, legally couldn't use it to go into the next year, it would just go back to you as, it would go back as excess income or excess to our budget, so.
Ask you a question, it's Bob Groves.
Go ahead, Bob.
I just want a little I guess I need little more clarification on that. I'm a little confused because I see that your budget request on the line on that pink section that we're looking at is $37,107. And then the rural aid gets added to that. So why isn't that a revenue source? Why is it part of the request? I don't get that.
If you look, that's actually part of the revenue source. And then the bottom line there, the net total
Is
is
for,
actually the amount that the town has to raise and appropriate. So if you look at the budget, it starts off at $2,364,379.
yeah,
And then I subtract 66,300, 30,000 and 30,000 to come up with $238,079. That's basically right now would be our request to the town of Shutesbury. which is an increase of $47,107 or 2.15% over last year.
Okay, thank you.
And this is, of course, this is preliminary. We haven't made any final decisions on this yet, so.
The other question I wanted to ask you is, the preschool is funded in this budget. Is the preschool meeting, or is there a preschool of any sort? Is there, I don't know the answer to this question, but does preschool students coming to SES, or are preschool students able to have remote learning? How does that work?
I can answer that, Bruce. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jackie, everybody. If you don't know me, I'm the principal. Yes, preschool has been meeting just like the rest of our school. And yes, they are coming in person. The entire school is out for 2 weeks following the break. But on next Tuesday, preschool through second grade will return to hybrid learning, and that includes preschool, and they do attend. We did make the cohort smaller this year because wrangling 3-year-olds with a mask is very difficult. So we did limit it to 4-year-olds and students requiring special education services because we are required to provide them service. We do have a high amount of students needing special education services right now in our preschool. And so that is very necessary. And so those students do come to school for a shortened amount of time in the morning. And then there is also a virtual component that makes the hybrid.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. Jeff, a question. At least the way and maybe you commented this and I missed it. It looks like a lot of what's driving the increase is the teachers' aides sped salaries. Can you comment on that? Or maybe you already did and I just missed it. Why the big jump?
I can speak to that too. There
Okay.
isn't a big jump. We did not hire any more aides than we normally have. We actually call them paraprofessionals. So I don't know why it's in there as aide, but we haven't hired any new paraprofessionals, but what we did is some of them were written in the wrong lines. And so we just readjusted them to the line they actually get paid out of. And because we only have one paraprofessional that's considered a general paraprofessional, the rest of the paraprofessionals all have special education duties. We do not have like extra hands running around. All of our paraprofessionals have special education responsibilities. And then also because they're so talented, operate on the whole as a general classroom support, and that's a bonus. But a lot of them are really tied to supporting specific needs because we don't have things like specialized programs in our building, specific needs for specific types of skill sets that kids have.
Okay, thanks, Jackie.
Susie, I
Thank
saw
you.
your hand up.
Hi. I wonder if the school committee would be able to draw up a plan of how they would want to use school choice money. Right now, you just said it might backfill if rural aid isn't there. But I wonder if there's going to be some kind of plan that they could begin to devise so that we would know how they want to use that money. It's up to them.
Anyone?
Dan, do you want to speak to that or do you want me to?
No, I can. I would just say that we would take it under advisement. We're always looking at how we can, I mean, first of all, the school choice money is sort of relatively new to us. And I think we didn't really know how that was going to pan out. We sort of think about how we're going to use it for enhancing or enriching our school. But certainly we, as a school committee, can work with administration to look at, best ways of utilizing that money. And I will just comment that, these times are very difficult. The funding streams and sources seem to, just be somewhat chaotic with questions that don't always get answered. But I hope, and I just want to reiterate that, we do the best that we can. I appreciate all the questions. Money that is left over does come back to the town. We don't build into our budget any kind of contingency, a contingency for any kind of maintenance issues or if we have a problem with heaters or anything like that. So I think we've had a great relationship with the town in that respect, because most schools operate in a system where they have to build in a contingency because they can't go back to their town or city for funds if something happens. We're sort of giving you the nuts and bolts of what it takes to run the school. And obviously, if we have a problem, we come back to you. When these funding streams seem to, kind of come and go with grants, things like that, when there is leftover, it comes back to the town. It doesn't come back to the school. But again, I will say that I do appreciate the questions, especially during this time of COVID. It's always a time for us to sort of do a zero-based budgeting analysis. And what that is really looking at, what do you need to run the school? It's not looking at, well, what was our budget last year and what's inflation? Let's multiply it out and figure out what it should be for this year. It's really not how it's done. Also with the para-educators, they are based on the needs of students for the special needs. And as far as the preschool program, I know we have talked about that in the past as well. The preschool program really is an essential program, particularly because of kids with special needs. If we did not have that program in our school, we would have to basically outsource these students to other places. That would be very, very expensive. We've done, the numbers in the past, that would be expensive. We do everything we can in our school to try to keep our students in our school. We really work hard on that inclusion. In the end, that helps to, reduce the cost for the town, but ultimately I think it gives better support and educational services for kids. Yes.
Rita, I see your hand.
Yep. I had two questions. One, what is the balance in the school choice account? And then my second question is, do you have any estimate at this point about what in the current year school budget, any money that might be returned to the town because it wasn't expended or won't be expended?
So Bruce, can you answer those?
Based on my last site of our school choice account, we have about $140,000 in there. I think it's probably more than that, because I think that was probably November, December. And the second question is, right now, we're looking at well in excess of $10,000 to $20,000 being returned this year. Unless something.
Bruce and I met earlier today on some other things, and we said, it's a lot cheaper to run a virtual school because we're not, we're not having substitutes, and we're not having the same kind of food expenses, and we're not having the similar types of even just supply expenses in the same way. And so there's definitely going to be some money, unless, look at the schools behind me, knock on some wood there. Unless there's some really catastrophic thing that happens that we need to be able to do in the school, I think there is going to be some money coming back, just because we're not utilizing some of the resources we would as if we were there in person the full year. Substitutes alone gives a decent amount of money.
Bob, you had your hand up, and then Jim Hemingway.
Yeah, I was going to just follow up on Susie's question to Dan. Dan, we've had some discussions in the FinCom about the school choice issue. I've been interested in this for years. I think that we should see that in the revenue side on your budget. and we never do. And I'm curious what your views on that are, because you see, to me, it seems like we should be able to count that as a resource to the school and consider it part of your revenue. Secondly, I would like to know, just as a member of the FinCom who's responsible for funding all departments, what the trends are, in terms of our enrollment. I know it's a difficult thing this year because it's such a weird, anomalous year, but I'd like to know, what amount of revenue is coming from school choice, because it does reflect circumstances which are important for us to be aware of in terms of the number of students that we're educating that we're not getting state funding for and stuff like that. So I think that we would like that information provided to us in a timely way so that we can come to grips with it, okay? And I'd just like to know what you think about the school choice as a revenue source in your budget.
Mhm.
So,
So I guess my comments would be trends. This year, there's not a trend. What I mean by that is, with this COVID situation, for example, we've had a lot of homeschool applications. So that doesn't affect us necessarily by, having to pay for for charter schools or school choice, but it is a reduction in Chapter 70 funds and that. We can certainly look at how, revolving accounts, I guess, are set up in a way where we have that information more readily available. But as far as how that money is used, that's, I think, something that the school committee really has to have a good discussion on. Again, it's been sort of a process, even for me. I mean, I've been on the school committee for a long time. There was a time when we didn't have school choice money. We've done a lot of things over the years, not only to accept school choice students, but also to work out sort of arrangements with towns where we have teachers who are bringing students in so that we can get them to pay like a school choice fund too. And now that money has accumulated. I think that's something that we didn't really expect. So I think it's a really good question. And I think for me as the chair of the school committee, I'm not sure who else is on, but it is a conversation that we should definitely have. I think in the past, we were really reluctant on using school choice as a revenue stream to support the school itself, mainly because we saw how it impacted other schools. When school choice students dropped and the revenue stream dropped, suddenly their budget was in a situation where they couldn't fund their school. So I appreciate the question and I will put it on the agenda.
Jim Hemingway, you had a question.
Jim, you're on mute.
Before we ask you, Jim, so Bob, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I would appreciate if you did come back to us with some information about what the committees, where you stand on that.
On recommendations, certainly.
Also the numbers, and I do know that it's an anomalous year. I understand that perfectly, but I do see that change. As you said, 4 years ago, there was no school choice money at all.
Right.
And there was just a couple. And then now it seems to be trending, even outside of this weird year, it seems to be trending up.
It is trending a little bit up because our town population was lower, but also because the teachers' children are now counted as school choice, where that was never the case before until last year. So that's also different because our teachers, which this speaks to the quality of the school, honestly, but our teachers choose to send their kids to the school. So because they are also counted, that makes up a good amount of kids.
Mm-hmm. And if I could just add a comment that, again, I've been on the committee a long time and a lot of this has been a process, a lot of changes, some of it related to what the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education allows. And I will also add that part of it is because of good questions that we've gotten from members of the community, from the Finance Committee. So, again, I just want to welcome your questions. I think you hopefully know that we try to be as transparent as possible with the budget. We try to provide the best quality education, but it is always it is a tough year for everybody, including the town. And we as a school committee will certainly talk about that school choice money and working with our administrators to figure out, how we can do it in a very responsible way.
Jim,
I
can
would
we
just
hear
like
you?
to-
Yeah, just I'm sorry, Jim Hemingway.
Well, yes, just two questions. You spoke of hoping to be able to return something north of $20,000 to the town this year. What were you able to return to the town in the fiscal 2020 year? And I also would like to know how you've been able to make use of the CARES Act money. Have you been able to, cash in on that, and has that really helped out? And do you see being able to lean into that? I think we still have access to another $20,000 worth of CARES Act money now, fortunately, in 2021 as well.
Well, we've been very lucky with the CARES Act. We've done quite a bit of work on the air handlers over at the school. The town CARES Act helped pay for some technology that we desperately needed to get up to one-to-one devices and get our kids learning remotely. And I think we still have actually some we can utilize, so.
Yeah, we did. And I just want to publicly say on behalf of the school community that we are very grateful for the money, but we're really grateful for the town as well in supporting us in getting what we need to be able to be a safe and healthy school. It's been really emotional and tough year. It's been really heartwarming, and I'm kind of at a loss for words because I get emotional when I think about this year because it's been for everybody, but as a school leader, it's really tricky too. Just the support from the town, I just want to say thank you, because our students and our staff are very lucky because we have safe air to breathe, and we have water that we can drink without getting germs on each other, and we have air purifiers to ensure that people are safe and healthy, and it goes on, the list goes on. But I just, we have great devices that kids can utilize at home. So we have really high quality remote learning when we need to. So I'm sorry to take over the meeting for a second, but I did just want to say thank you that the school feels very supported. And I know this year has been really tough, but it has been great to have the stuff that we need to make it work.
And Bruce, do we know how much money was returned in the previous year?
Just give me a second, Dan, and I can give you my.
Right. While you're looking that up, I guess I also want to add something to what Jackie just said. Again, as a school committee member, this is a difficult decision in terms of trying to open the school. We have, set plans to do so. Getting letters from people in our community, one after another, people with different perspectives, different viewpoints, and some of them with, pretty, kind of not so easy to take statements. So I do appreciate the administration and how they're meandering through this very difficult process. I want to thank the Board of Health for their constant vigilance and access. They've been unbelievable to work with. And this really is, I think, a great example of how a town has come together to really try to do what they think is best. So I appreciate everybody too. And Jackie, I appreciate all that you're doing. All right, so Bruce, do we have that number?
Yeah, just a second. I'm printing it out because I can't read it off my computer because my print's too small. It looks to me like 18,000 and change, but let me just verify.
Jackie,
Bruce, isn't it the difference between column O and B and P?
The 18,000 sounds about right to me, Bruce, from my memory, but my memory is shot.
It's on,
$18,090.
It's on the screen, right? 2,172,000, but 2,154,000 was spent.
Yeah, but that doesn't include all the grants and, well, yeah, that's $18,000, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it is $18,090 is what I'm
Yeah, because I was looking
showing.
at column P. Column P is the actual spend.
Yep, yep.
Becky,
And it relates to the 2,172,000, and that's $18,000. So, yeah, that was, and my understanding is that the actually some of the CARES money that you got went to pay for the computers that we purchased with FY20 money also. So that's actually money that came back to the town.
Yeah.
And that was to the tune of $16,000. So that puts what we contributed back to the community in the $30,000 range. So
Bruce, it was actually more. It was about 26,000, I think. So
okay,
it puts you close, $45,000, $50,000 that the town returned by utilizing the CARES Act for all the computers that were needed for the remote learning, because it was 100% eligible to be funded by CARES money.
Becky.
so I think we did really good last year. So we had a good year, and I'm thinking we're going to have a really good budget year this year. So
okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Oh, Susie and George. Susie, then George.
I just want to say having a really good year was based on some really hard times. It's not like these expenses will be gone away in FY22. It's that the school and the community was able to meet this situation and create a savings. But there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it. And we're hoping to return to a normal budget year for FY22.
yeah, here, I agree with that.
George, and then Ajay.
Yes, I wanted a little clarification on the paraprofessional lines. Jackie, you were talking about how the costs weren't necessarily in the right lines, and this budget is going to fix that. Bruce, was it just the two lines? The one that decreased by 16,000 and the one that decreased by 36? Or are there other lines involved?
No, just those two lines, George.
Okay, so when you add those up, it's about an 8% increase. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So why is it 8%? Is that the combination of COLAs and steps?
Steps and yeah. I can do a little research on that. I'll look into that a little further.
If you don't mind, if you can,
Sure.
it would be helpful.
No, that's not a problem.
Okay, so that's not necessarily though, okay, so looking at those two lines, it's not necessarily an indication that there's sped needs increasing. It's just accounting of the lines.
No, but funny you said that, because there may be some, just because of some new enrollment, some new students at some point, that actually could need to be increased. But as of when we made this, no, it wasn't because of any greater need.
Okay,
And George, just so you know, there's other factors involved here. When we apply for one of our grants, we have to do what they call maintenance of effort. And if it doesn't get budgeted in the right line, especially for special needs, then we don't meet our maintenance of effort, and we've got to jump through a whole bunch of hoops to get our it's our 240 grant, it's our IDEA money, and that amounts to about $30,000 to the district. So, it's important that we make sure that we budget enough and it's budgeted in the right line so that it's reflected in other areas that we have to report to the.
otherwise they'll think you're not spending it the way they want you to, right? And they
And
won't
we're
give you
not
the money.
spending enough money on special needs, and they technically penalize us for it. So
And then I just want to make a general comment, really for everybody. If you were to go to the very bottom, the 30,000 for the rural aid is really one shot revenue source. Is that correct?
Well, when they originally started rural aid, it was supposed to be something that continued. I'm not sure with the Student Opportunity Act, if they're going to try to roll some of the rural thoughts into that and provide the rural communities with a little more Chapter 70 money, or how that's going to fall out. But this
Okay.
was basically a special appropriation by the state, and it was actually 2 years. Of course, this year, fortunately, they were able to basically level fund our appropriations for Chapter 70 year over year, which I think, in my opinion, was a great thing for the state to do. I'm hoping next year that we at least see level funding, if not an increase.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of things going to play out in the FY22 state budget. So, but it's possible it could come back in the not too distant future, because it's an important thing for the small rural districts like us and New Salem and some of the other communities that get it locally. So.
Okay, yeah, my one concern is if we get temporary funding, I'm not sure we should always put it here. It almost might be better to give it to the town directly and we just fund the budget with it. Because if we get big fluctuations in the revenue section, we're going to get big fluctuations on our budget. And that doesn't tell the real story to the people who are looking at historical budgets. It's just something for everybody to think about. But
Yeah.
it sounds like if this is going to continue, then it makes sense to me to leave it
Well,
there.
and it was really, it was designed to come as almost like a grant. You didn't really have to apply for it, but you had to state how you were going to use it to improve.
Yeah, you had to do, Bruce, by twice a year report. So
Yeah.
there was some bookkeeping and there was some reporting involved. It wasn't just given, right? So there was some reporting.
Thank you. And then,
Right, and George, yeah, the plan was that was, because many states do that. And, a lot of effort and work went into getting that as a revenue stream. Well, that stream, whatever, we have no idea what's going to happen. So
yeah, no, I get it.
I see your point, but we were looking at it. This was going to happen moving forward. Their criteria changed, each year. It's been a crazy mess. But
No,
we'll
I
see what
appreciate that. I totally appreciate that. I was just conceptually, I was just, articulating that. And then that's it for me, except that this is a great presentation in terms of the layout of this, the way you present this budget, the drivers and everything lined up. It's very easy to understand. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I second that one. Becky?
I just wanted to note that Steve Sullivan, I see him on the list. Steve, are you there? Did you have any questions or comments?
Nope, I'm here though.
Good to see you. So we have 2 school committee members here. Thank you.
And Steve was at another meeting earlier, so he couldn't be on earlier.
Mhm.
It's a crazy time with meetings too.
It is, definitely. Bob, I see your hand up again.
Just want to ask one last general question directed to Dan or Bruce. As we all know what the financial circumstances are and the unknowns that we're all surrounded with. And as a member of the Finance Committee, I've always felt or have felt that we should be level funding our budget this year as a kind of a prudent measure to protect our taxpayers from harm. I just wanted to ask a general question. I know you don't know what the state funding is going to be, and there's a lot of other unknowns, but what would happen to your budget? What would the impact be if you level funded it? I think my interpretation of this is it's 2.15% increase. What would be the impact on your budget, your ability to provide the service if you level funded it?
Well, first of all, I would say, looking at the revenue sources, I don't know. They're kind of they're kind of shaky in the first place. If it were level funded, we would have to evaluate and look and see how it would impact us. Again, we try to have a budget that we think is basically providing the services that we need in the school. We have, one principal, one nurse, one teacher in each grade. Para educators are basically assigned to students with special needs. So, and again, I look at the revenue that comes back to the town. So if we had that money, how would that impact the budget? It would lower what we're asking for, but then it comes back to the town because there's so many variables and unknown. So we can ponder that as a school committee.
Jay?
Yeah, I just want to make the sort of a slightly different point, which is that I think the school is going to have a different kind of unique challenge next year. There's been some inevitable regression in, for some population of students in the school who just, for whatever set of reasons, and despite the tremendous work of teachers to implement a remote school program, it's just a fact that for some students, they will just not have made the kind of cognitive learning gains that we need them to, and there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure. I mean, I shouldn't say. There's going to be a need to help those students kind of recover and address that kind of lag that may have occurred, probably has occurred for, again, I'm not saying for all students, but for some students. And given that challenge, it just doesn't seem to me to be the time to constrain the school. And I'm happy that this budget, particularly around the instruction area, it essentially preserves the resources that the school has. And I feel like it would be a mistake for the community to make those any significant cuts, particularly around the instruction component of the budget. And just a small little detail, I think some of the budget documents in this presentation are just labeled fiscal year 21, just for
Oh, sorry.
just to clear that. No problem. Just to point that out.
So I think you bring up a good point, and I know that our incredible administration, teachers, staff do really well to try to address the needs of students. But the point I think you're making is not only it's the students in our own elementary school, but it's the students that are being homeschooled now, students that may move here from a different community. The Massachusetts has the state framework so that every school should sort of be at the same, teaching the same things at the same time. We know that's not happening. I think in Union 28, we're very fortunate with the remote learning that we've been able to implement. Other communities have not had that same sort of ability. So I don't think we do know what our challenges are going to be, next year or even the year after. The state is continuing to want to push having the MCAS tests. I think we just had a resolution in our school committee in Union 28 to really look at that as, especially not to be there to be a penalty associated with it. I think assessment is always good, and I think we're going to be doing a lot of different assessment when students come back to see exactly where they are. I think that for many students, they've been able to adapt and have been able to move forward. It's one of the reasons why we did have students with special needs come back to the school in person, because we felt we didn't want them to fall behind. But yeah, you're right. We have no idea what's going to be happening, next year or the year after even. But I have full confidence that our school will do what's necessary to make sure that every student is successful.
Jim Walton and then
Yeah.
Jim Hemingway.
Yeah, to that same point the last couple of speakers have made, and the question is maybe more towards Bruce or Jackie. Given the budget you're presenting here, do you see any significant pain points that you think are going to be real challenging in order to deliver what you think you need to deliver for education? And given where you have right now a budget presented.
So I think the budget we have right now is solid in being able to provide what we need to provide for right now. However, I just want to say that there is something in the back of my mind that is really wondering about if I have enough manpower to be able to address all of the needs, particularly the early learning needs of kids who have been trying to learn how to read virtually.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And that, Jim, it's in the back of my mind. I don't know if I'm going to have the manpower to recover everything that we're going to need to try to make up. But, the whole landscape of school, honestly, is going to have to look a little different for several years to come to make up this ground for everybody. We have had a stellar program, but nothing takes the place of in-person learning. Nothing does, particularly for our little ones. Like someone who just spoke, kid is in the 6th grade at our school. The 6th grade can do a whole lot more online than the 1st grade can do in terms of virtual learning, right? So that's why we prioritize the little kids first into hybrid. But anyway, as of right now, yes. But there is something in the back of my mind that's a little worried about what we're going to actually see when we're back social, emotionally, and academically. These are kids who have been not with kids for a year. There's going to be more fallout than just academics, so that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, thanks.
Jim Hemingway.
Yes, when is the MCAS test going to be administered to kids K through 6? And I think you've already spoken to this, but what do you anticipate the financial consequences of whatever adjustments we're going to have to make? I know that's a very difficult question to answer, as you just said, but it's been on my mind lately.
So they've reduced the MCAS administration by half, so it will be half the amount of time and a smaller test during the same window in the spring, unless we hear otherwise. But that was our latest update from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Leslie.
You're on mute.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Am I good?
You're good.
Simply as a citizen, an elderly, as it were, who lives around the corner within hearing distance of the PA announcement at the school, I just want to commend the presentation and the efforts of Dan and Jackie this evening. You've been very forthright, very honest, and I think you're real professionals. And as a citizen, I simply want to thank you.
And don't forget Bruce and Jennifer.
And Bruce and Jennifer.
Bruce is the one that put this all together. And I do appreciate all of the compliments. Again, I want to say that the administration has worked really hard. And, we always say that, but, it is difficult times. And I think, everyone on the planet's in the same boat. Everyone has this underlying stress, overarching anxiety and pressure. And I have to say, again, seeing the emotional toll on Jackie in particular, this is difficult. However, again, I think tonight, thank Bruce for the great presentation. I think you all, have great questions. I think particularly the question about school choice money, and perhaps a really good way of helping utilize that money in some way, is something that we certainly will look at. And it's something we've sort of talked about, but it is one of those things that, even though I've done this a long time, the revenue piece of this is always kind of crazy. And this year, like the town, we're worried, and the uncertainty is always difficult, but there's so many things that are evolving in our school. I think one of the greatest things, and I appreciate Superintendent Jennifer for doing that, is moving the central office into the schools. When we were losing the building in Irving, a building that we were paying very little rent on, a building that was probably should have been condemned. I was worried. I didn't know what was going to happen with the staff. Jennifer and her team came up with a great idea to integrate them into the schools. And I think it was really a win-win. It was a reduction in costs. It was also a way of connecting administrators, back into the school with students. So I think there's been a lot of great things going on amongst the whole issue of COVID and all of the stress that goes with it. But I do appreciate the questions, and certainly the one about school choice money is one that we will discuss at our next meeting.
Any other?
questions?
Yeah. Does not look, Jim Walton, do you have a question or no?
Just a comment, just from the finance committee. I just want to express my appreciation for everybody involved with running this school up here in Shutesbury over this past year, or continuing to the end of this year. It's been quite the challenges, and you guys have really demonstrated some pretty amazing results. And also with this budget process for next year, we're basically pretty much flat. 1.559% is pretty close to flat. So given a lot of unknowns, you guys have really been up to the challenge, I think. So.
Well, I'll also
quite a performance.
Well, I'll also say that, it's great that the town works together, meaning the school is a part of the town, and we work, really, together on all of this. Many years ago, I kind of felt that there was a us and them sort of thing, but I really feel that the school is definitely integrated into the town. We also recognize the position that the town is in. I recognize that people really don't want taxes to go up. But we also recognize that our job is to make sure that we do provide the best quality education for kids, and for a number of reasons, even for being cost effective, because if we don't, there are options for students out there. It is a competitive environment, and we do need to be the best. And I think we are.
We're very appreciative of the town's support. I work with 5 towns in total, and Shutesbury is so supportive of the school. So I am most grateful.
And I want to thank everybody too for all their hard work for COVID stuff. I've had the pleasure of sitting in on some of my nephew's remote classes, and I'm pretty impressed. Very impressed, actually. So, and to capture a 6-year-old's attention as much as that can be done is impressive. So thank you all for doing all of that work, and all the committees here too. Thank you so much for keeping going. We never really missed a step. So all that hard work is paying off at this moment with this wonderful budget and wonderful education the kids can get, even though everyone's stuck in their houses. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
All right, we can go?
I think so. Unless anyone has something else they want to share. Does the finance, I know the school committee didn't have a quorum, but does the finance committee want to adjourn themselves?
Finance.
Oh, go ahead, Becky.
I think there's some more agenda items for the
Oh,
finance.
okay.
Okay.
All right, well, the select board can excuse themselves, then anyone else who'd like to can too.
All
Thank
right,
you all
school
very
committee is
much.
going.
Yeah,
Good
and
night,
thank
thank
you,
you.
Good
school
night, everybody.
administrators.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Nice work. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And Bruce, don't forget to take your
Yeah.
spreadsheet.
Forget the what?
The spreadsheet that's still on,
Yeah, I
my
gotta figure
screen.
out how to get off of here, but
okay.
There's a leave button on the bottom right.
like,
Oh, you have to unshare the screen.
my-
He's sharing he has to hit the share screen button.
I wish I could find it.
Should be like a little green button on the bottom.
No, I don't have my bottom bar. That's my problem.
Oh, well, bring your cursor down and maybe the bar will show up.
And it'll be in the middle.
And then there'll be a,
No, that didn't work at all.
You try bringing your cursor all the way down.
Yeah.
Bruce, were you going to leave the meeting?
Yeah, yeah.
You might have to stay
Just
with
close
us,
your
Bruce.
browser.
Can't find that.
Yeah.
Just close your browser.
Let's see what happens when I do this. No, let's shut the video off.
Yeah, we can't see you, but we can still see your screen.
Eh, I've had this problem before.
Well, I'm impressed you got it up so quickly.
Yeah, but I can't get rid of it.
Can't you just leave the meeting?
Oh, wait, I think
Just close the browser.
You may have to,
this will stop other screen sharing.
there we go.
What happened? It didn't work.
Yeah, let's see if I can go over here. Oh, door, stop share.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank you very much.
It was at the top of the screen. So, all right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for your
Good night, Bruce.
Take care, Bruce.
comments.
Yeah, Bruce.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay. Finance Committee, we're still in session.
Yes.
We're good. Okay, do we want to go through minutes from our last meeting? Everybody sounds pretty excited.
so-
These are Susie's minutes. That I think we were sent, what, yesterday or today? I think I forwarded them out to everybody. I don't know, has everybody had a chance to look at them, or do we want to take a minute or two for everyone to get a chance to?
The minutes of the 29th?
Yes.
I
Members,
don't recall seeing those.
Yeah, I forwarded them to everybody. Let
a
me
couple
see.
days ago.
Yeah, I think it was yesterday.
Last night,
Um,
7:30 last night.
Oh, okay, thank you. I'll find it.
Members absent ought to include AJ.
Okay, that's one change.
Not here.
I was playing the part of AJ, so.
I understand.
You were doing your inner AJ? AJ, I guess you were there.
In spirit, I
In
guess.
spirit,
Yeah.
that's right.
So it was Susie, I think, that sent them out, not Jim.
Yeah, I just
Well,
found
I
it.
forwarded them. I think Susie
Yeah.
sent them to me, and then I forwarded them to the whole team.
I don't have the header for mailing out to the FinCom.
So you might see an email from me with.
I found
attached
Susie's
min-
actually.
Susie's attached minutes.
Yep, I'm all set. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Is there anybody that's not all set? Melody, you look like you're still studying them. Oh, we can't hear you.
Sorry, just trying to pull up the minutes.
Okay, so, all right, we'll take a couple more minutes to go over the minutes. Actually, Melody, you don't get to vote. So I don't think you were present. So you probably want to just, normally
Okay.
you wouldn't vote, but you might have a question. You might have a question on the minutes for clarification.
Aren't we obligated to put who exactly wrote the minutes on the minutes up above? I don't,
Mm. Usually town clerk received minutes, it would just say respectfully submitted at the end, so that
Oh,
could be added.
usually the author of the minutes appears
I don't
at the
think that's
beginning.
required.
I don't know.
required,
I'll add respectfully submitted by Susie Mosier at the end.
Oh,
I've seen lots of minutes where it didn't specify.
okay.
I don't know if that's good or bad or right or wrong,
Yeah,
but I know I have.
None of us.
I do have a question. On the whole level funding or level service. Is that a discussion that's going to happen later? It wasn't clear from the minutes to me.
Yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4. On the fourth bullet, it does say that FinCom clarify the language of what constitutes level funded or level services budget at a future meeting.
Oh, okay. I just didn't know when that was going to be. Okay. Because I've been curious about that myself. So. Thank you.
I actually had read these before. I'm fine with them.
Is anyone still reviewing? We just had the one change, add an age 8 as a,
And I'll sign off respectfully submitted Susie Mosier on it.
Becky,
Number 5, the dollar amounts, are they still blank? I know I had on everyone's, or do I have an old version?
must have an old version.
That's an
Yeah,
old.
there's dollars here.
Okay, I had my old version. That's what I thought.
25 for the library, 5,000 for installation of school sliding doors.
yeah, and we also talked about funding for police cruiser, but we didn't talk about a specific dollar amount.
The dollar amount that was part of the quote he reviewed was about $48,000. I can't remember the exact hundreds.
It wasn't spoken at the meeting, so I didn't put it in there.
Yeah.
But it was included in documents that I had seen. So it wasn't, okay, sorry. I believe he did say it was just under $50,000 is what he said at the meeting.
Ask him.
Do we want to make a motion to modify the minutes or accept the minutes as modified?
I'll make a motion that we accept these minutes as modified.
Second.
Okay. Go for the vote. George?
Arvanitis, aye.
Melody.
Melody, you would just maybe
Okay, Chartier abstain.
abstain, yeah.
I vote yes, aye. Groves.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, abstain.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, aye. All right. Expense report was our next item on the agenda. Is any, I think we have the expense report from 2 weeks ago. Does that sound right, Becky? That was hot off the press. at our
And
last meeting?
10 minutes before the meeting, I just got a new one. But I think we need to catch up to the one we have. And I'll send that out after the meeting so we don't get confused.
Okay, so when you say catch up to the one we have, you mean,
On the 29th.
okay, we want to use that as our,
Unless everybody wants the new, I can send it right now. It's just, it was no time to even get it out before the meeting.
If you can send it, let's be up to date. Otherwise, we're just going to ask the same questions again.
Oh, I'm not sure I would have any time to think about it, so we can receive it, but I don't know that I want to try to process it for tonight, but I could listen.
What's on the agenda for the next meeting? Can we just wait till the next meeting to talk about expenses?
We can.
Yeah,
Or
right.
maybe someone has reviewed the minutes from 2 weeks ago, and there's some new questions.
I didn't have any new questions from the previous one.
All right, so we can add it to the agenda for our next meeting.
Okay.
The next meeting that we actually have is the all boards on the 19th, and then the next one after that is on the 26th for assessors collector.
What is the 4-town meeting scheduled? And when are we?
February 6th.
February 6th.
What are we going to discuss our preparation for that? Is that scheduled in our upcoming meetings?
Now, I think we just got notification of the meeting on the agenda, in the last day or two.
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah, definitely need to get that on the agenda.
If we do it on the January 26th, because then the following meeting is February 9th, it would be too late unless we wanted to schedule another intervening meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 26th meeting is going to be a busy one.
So regional school will be on the agenda for the 26th?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what all you think about that, but I think maybe we should be planning on spending some time on that, and maybe getting input from others like the select board. And I'm not sure the 26th might be kind of late in the day to do that, don't you think? Isn't that kind of close to the 4-town meeting?
Do we know, is there going to be another 4-town meeting after that one?
Probably.
Because the superintendent was talking about it.
Right.
Because this one might still be, we might still be in information mode, information gathering mode, hearing from the other towns, seeing the update from Amherst, I think is going to be critical. And really everything is going to be, a lot's going to be contingent on Amherst. We know how we feel. We've already talked about this. We know what our position is. I don't know how much more we can kick this can around without more information.
Well, go ahead, Becky.
The select board meets on the 2nd. I think it would be a good idea to invite, if on the 2nd, that was just, the select board would ask school committee and finance committee to join the meeting for discussion. That would help out with that gap if the 26th, if it feels like we still need a meeting after discussion on the 26th, I think the select board would need to do that either way, but I think it would be helpful to have all 3 boards' perspectives, especially in this situation.
I can do that.
Is everybody available on that date? I know the school committee had trouble with tonight's date, so I'll make sure they are going to be available.
Should be. When would FinCom join that meeting, Becky?
If 7 o'clock, you guys generally do better later.
Really?
Wider awake.
I'm losing it.
We're talking about the 2nd, Becky?
Yeah.
Yes, 2nd of February.
Hey.
So everybody might be repeating what they did.
Yeah, right. It seems like that's what school choice, the statutory method's all about, Groundhog Day. So.
Yep, I think it's a good match. Yeah, so I will contact the select board and make sure that they will be interested in that, and I'll reach out to the school committee and make sure that that time and day works for them. Okay?
Yes, Steve Sullivan in particular, right? So he can give us feedback about what's been going on at the region, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking to that, if you're looking at the agenda for this next regional, the 4-town meeting, they talk about that they'll have some preliminary spending and revenue for the next fiscal year. Is there any chance we can see some of that in advance of the meeting? Or at least ask or request or?
I will definitely ask and request. I know last time they were unable to do that because they had no information. But I do have an update, a little update on the bus contract today that I've been pushing Doug for. And so I know he's trying to put numbers together as best he can. So hopefully he will be able to give us something ahead of time,
That'd be great.
but we can definitely request.
Susie,
Historically, when is the last of the 4-town meetings where rubber hits the road? What month?
It's often been in March, but there's usually only been 2 meetings.
Right. So this might indicate that they're expecting 3 meetings out of it, which they kind of hinted at. And so it might not be the rubbers on the road until later.
Becky, any idea when you're going to get any information from the state about revenue streams from that direction?
I have not heard anything yet.
isn't that somewhat contingent on what happens at the federal level too? There's still a lot of potential different directions that things could go on at the federal level, right?
Another stimulus bill.
Hmm?
Another stimulus bill.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Could I ask a question about the old town meeting, the all boards meeting?
Sure.
What's the current format of that? Because the last time I was on the finance committee, it was just chairs only.
No, it's everyone.
Okay.
Who can, I mean, it's not, it's boards and committees, members of boards and committees that are available, because some of our, chairs are co-chairs. I think it's really important for all of
Okay.
the
No,
committee members.
that's
to
fine. I'm just asking.
state.
Okay.
And when we restrict it, then you only get half of the chairs, and a tenth of the volunteers get information. So the select board opened it back up again.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Becky, to that point, I'm planning to put something together to answer the questions that were put forward by the select board. And I would just ask for the rest of the committee, if you all have some things that you want to make sure are included in that discussion, in that 2-minute spot or 2 or 3 minute spot, that let me know so I can include that perspective. That's next Tuesday, right, Becky? That's a week from today?
Yep.
Yeah, so anybody that has some ideas or thoughts that they want to make sure included as part of this, just if you could zap me something before then.
Yeah, and it would be regarding the finance committee work.
Yeah.
Not just any issue.
Okay.
Ask a question? Oh, Becky, I was wondering when we might be seeing the first draft of the budget. You have pretty much everything in at this point, except for maybe the region, right?
Yep, I think I can have it for you on the 26th. The revenue side is like, I think I'm just gonna not make any assumptions of dramatic cuts. We'll just hold it steady. The state pulled through, and all indications are they're planning to do it again. So at this point, that's what I'll start with on the revenue side.
So I don't know what else on the agenda. Is now an okay time to talk about the cash on the revenue side that we did in 2021? dare I bring it up? Because we're funding a portion of our budget right now with cash. It's not a huge portion, but it definitely was resulting in tax savings to the property taxpayers in our town. And so we know best practice says you don't prop up a budget with cash, but best practice says it's okay to use cash on temporary items. When I look at this budget and I hear about, we have this conversation about the regional school budget, to me, there's a temporary item in our budget that we can fund with cash for 2022, and that is the gap in the assessment methods, which last year was about $145,000. When I look at the budget for 2021, we're using $200,000. In my mind, 145,000 of that is the gap between 100% statutory and 45% statutory. And in my mind, right now, the taxpayers aren't really paying they're paying the statutory rate, not the 45% statutory rate, because in terms of taxes, we're paying for it because it's our cash. So I won't say that we're not paying for it, but the taxpayers are not, it's not in their bills this year. And if somebody said to us, why are you using $200,000 in cash? It would be best if we had specific items to point to that. Where I'm leading is, I think that for starters, Becky, when you create the budget for 2022, that when you look at what amount you might put in the regional budget, whatever basis you use, the gap between that method and the statutory method is the minimum amount that we should be funding the budget for with cash in 2022. To me, if you're funding the budget with cash to help the taxpayers, which I'm grateful for, I appreciate, and I know that a lot of people in this town do, but at some point we have to pull the rug out from under them and stop funding it with cash, because it's just not sustainable. Whether that's 1 or 10 years from now, I don't know. But by just doing that gap in the regional assessment and continuing on this march of ours to go to full statutory, when we go to full statutory, that portion no longer needs to be funded with cash, and the taxpayers don't see the impact on the rate. Nobody's hurt. Becky, you got a puzzled look on your face.
Yeah, no, I was having trouble following which, the changing gaps and where you're putting the money, and conceptually, I think it would be helpful to do a spreadsheet, because I'm concerned, because what you're saying, I kind of like the concept, but if the fact, it really depends on whether we're gonna get to 100% statutory or not, and over time. But if you assume that we will, and we fund, you're suggesting that we continue to fund with cash for up to a few more years, I'm really concerned about the structural deficit. This was meant to be a one-time issue, to use the free cash one time, because it just grows. You do it a second year and a third year, and it becomes $600,000. And it's a very serious proposal.
You have to watch it from year to year, but again, if we take that 200,000 out right now, everybody just gets slammed again. And, it's always been our philosophy. It's been my philosophy. Certainly one of the things that drives a lot of what I propose in our meetings is slow fluctuations, not volatile fluctuations, not big changes in the tax rate up or down, but step towards them. And I know a lot of people agree with that. Becky, just one more thing to your point before I give up the floor. In February, I'm happy to do a long-range forecast. If you've got some of those documents together, I can put a couple long-range forecasts together and we can see how that might look. If we go to statutory 100% in 23, 24, or 25, we can look at how much cash that might cost us to fill those gaps, depending on how we go. I could definitely spend some time on that, doing some what-if analysis, if you will, doing it different ways so that we can have a better idea.
Okay, thank you.
Just to George's point, I guess I'm a little confused. We've been at 45% 45%, we're almost half of the way there, and we haven't used this approach of tapping into cash as we've gotten halfway there. So I'm a little concerned about shifting the way we do things on funding this.
I think we did. I think that's what we did this year.
This 1 year.
But
This
not for
1
that
year. I'm
purpose.
talking about prior. I'm talking about prior years, and I don't recall that this 1 year that we used the gap between statutory and the 45% as the rationale for doing that.
We didn't.
That's not the rationale we used.
Right. Can I say something, Jim?
I think Les was next, then Susie, and then Bob.
Oh,
Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I on? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for recognizing me, Jim. I always appreciate it. I don't take it for granted. And George, all due respect, you know so much more about all town finances and budgeting than I do. But basically what I understand what you're proposing, it's not transparent. It's not transparent to the taxpayers that we are not moving forward, or what the deal is, or what the situation is, or what the agreement is in terms of what we are paying more than our allotted share if we weren't going the statutory method. I don't think that's transparent to the voters.
Susie.
So I think of as a process tonight, our job is to consider some possibilities. So we had last year's rationale, which was, I believe, and I believe it was some OPEB money and new library money. It was called future something futures. And so it added up to a number. That's one process or one possibility. Next possibility is that we're thinking about, we're not coming to any decision tonight, is George's idea that the gap between 100% statutory and where we are could be funded out of free cash, given that that will march forward in time till 100% of the money comes from the change in the allocation. So I don't want to go into a level of detail that tries to come to a decision. I want to think about what are the ramifications of some of these choices, and see if there's any other choices that people can think of.
Well, but Susie, you left out an obvious third choice too, which is to not use any free cash in the
Yeah,
budget.
I'm not
right?
making the
That's-
choices tonight. I'm just
I
trying to
understand.
reiterate where we've come, what we're doing tonight.
No, I get it. It just as long as we're sort of laying out some different models here, that of course is got to be.
There's another one, and
Yeah.
each one of them has implications. So, you know, I've been reading the handbook, the FinCom handbook, and from the state, and it talks about having subcommittees to flesh out ideas. And sometimes I feel at these meetings we come up with pieces, but it's hard to come to coherence. So tonight I'm happy to be here and talking about possibilities and try to think about what the ramifications are of each one, and then come to a decision later.
Bob.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I support George's idea, mainly because I think it's a good way to buffer the impact on the taxpayer this year. And I think it's not a bad way to structure this, the diminution of using cash over time, because my opinion is that we're gonna put it pretty firmly on the table that we're going statutory in a couple of years. We're gonna make it clear to the other towns that this is happening in short order. So if with that in mind, then we can have some confidence that we will our assessment will go down in a matter of 2 or 3 years. That's one thing. The other thing we have to remember here is that we talked about funding the budget with cash last year, but really, if you look at the budget and you look at the cash reserves, really we threw something like $220,000 at the tax rate, and we put a $205,000 into reserves from other sources. So we did, the net change, the net amount of cash that we actually applied to the budget was really only about $10,000 or $15,000 by my reckoning. So we have to be honest about this, and we have to be transparent about this. Some of us, including myself, feel that our cash reserves are way too high. I think that using it for special things like funding, what George describes is a good thing. Tax relief in a COVID year is obviously an exceptional situation that may be repeating again this year. I think we are in extraordinarily unusual fiscal times. So this is not, it's not necessarily that we're proposing to use cash to fund our budget on an annual permanent basis. But I don't think there's any issue with spending our cash down a little bit to buffer the tax rate and what might be an inevitable tax increase this coming fiscal year. And George's proposal, I think, makes a lot of sense if we're serious about getting the statutory method on board in a 2 to 3 year period.
AJ.
Just a very quick point. My sort of immediate thought is just that this conversation feels premature to me, like not having actually seen a complete budget. I know sounds like we've got one that we're going to be looking at on the 26th that'll have probably lots of missing information on the revenue side. But so I totally support the idea that Susie was laying out of like looking at some different approaches and having a kind of serious debate about what's best for the town. Just in terms of timing, it feels like just a premature time to be really diving into that now.
Melody, I think you had your hand.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding incredibly naive and in need of a lot more training, I want to throw kind of a dumb question out there maybe. I've been on this committee now for a few months and trying to soak everything in like a sponge, but there's probably a lot I've missed. I just have kind of a basic question, and I'm representing Jane taxpayer here. Why is it that I mean, I know Shutesbury's been paying partial statutory for a number of years now, but why is it that we don't just go cold turkey 100% statutory next year? I mean, why are we waiting? What are we waiting for? I don't understand that.
Because it's not our decision. It's a joint
but why
agreement.
Not? I mean, isn't it our town and our taxes and our money? How is it not our decision?
Because it's a regional agreement. We're one of 4 towns that are sort of co-operating a school district together and sending students to that district. And so the assessment method that we implement has to be one that's agreed upon by the 4 towns. So we've been negotiating over a long period of time and getting closer and closer to that goal of 100% statutory.
Is that in the bylaw? Is that in bylaws somewhere? Do other towns negotiate with us? I mean, everything I've heard, it feels like Shutesbury's asking a lot of permission, and I don't hear that from other towns.
Because none of the other towns want this to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not in any bylaws. There is an agreement between all 4 towns. And that agreement has specifications, like on the budget, 3 out of the 4 towns have to agree to pass the budget or there's no budget. When it comes to changing the regional bylaws, you have to have all 4 towns have to agree to amend the bylaws.
I see.
All 4. So if we, to ask for the amendment to the standing per pupil way, we would need to get, for that to change in the bylaw, all 4 towns have to agree to that.
But what makes us think that they're going to agree to 100% statutory 2 years from now if they wouldn't agree to it now?
I'm not, I mean, there's varying opinions on whether they would. They may not. Because If we just went straight statutory, there's a thought that we potentially could go to shift to statutory by just voting down, voting the, what do we have to vote down? The article. We have to pass annually an article to not have what's in our original 1950s agreement. And every year we vote on the methodology. This past year, we voted on the 45%, and all the towns supported it because of careful political negotiation that's been going on for years. We get to a point where we don't vote to support it. The default is supposed to be to straight statutory. The problem with straight statutory is it's incredibly volatile and nobody really wants straight statutory, but it only puts you into a process where the state comes in and works with people to help bring the 4 towns together. And then state will come in, and then we will have to negotiate an agreement with them in the end anyway. But now you're in a hostile situation because you've already taken the step that makes it more volatile. So it's not a slam dunk easily in any direction by any single action that we can take.
I think Bob is next.
I'd like to make a comment, which is just to slightly disagree with Becky's characterization. Just so we're clear about this, Melody. The statutory method is called that because it is the law, and 72% of the regions in the state employ it. If we have to have, but we're operating under what's called an alternative method now, which was agreed by all 4 towns, accepted. We, the town of Shutesbury, as far as I understand it, for years now have been lobbying to move towards statutory, and we've had a lot of difficulty. And frankly, to put it plainly, the other towns, like particularly Levitt and Amherst, would not benefit from that movement. They would financially be paying what we would be saving. So it's a zero-sum game. So yeah, naturally they're going to oppose it. But we do have some leverage, and we can do that with respect and consideration for their point of view. But we need to apply the leverage. And the leverage really is that if we vote no on the alternative method, it's going to revert to the statutory. And that doesn't mean we're mean and nasty, and it's not going to necessarily send our school district into a receivership or anything like that. The budget can be approved by 3 out of the 4 towns, but the alternative method has to be unanimously approved. And if we withhold our approval, or if our taxpayers at town meeting withhold their approval, then it's game over. That's the way it works.
No, that's where
we turn it into a receivership. The budget can be approved independently from the alternative method.
But that's not how it works. So we can
change it. We can have a different article for both.
No, it's not that simple.
Susie, I think you were next.
Why we haven't done it.
Whoops. Okay.
I feel like there's a lot of information that Melody needs to pick up on. I think people are doing a pretty good job explaining it, but there's historical pieces, and if we change suddenly to statutory the other way, it backfires. Is that Amherst might be saddled with a portion of the agreement that they will be forced to cut the programs at the school in order to meet their share, and that is part of why we're doing this in a step-by-step reasoned way that can maintain a relationship with the 4 towns and accommodate the change slowly.
George, George, you had your hand up?
Yes. Jim, you want to go first? Let Jim go first. I think.
Well, just that we're forgetting that it's statutory is combined with a 5-year rolling average. And so that kind of mollifies the volatility that we could otherwise might run into. So that's not to be forgotten in this discussion as well.
And that's,
And that is an alternative method that has to be agreed upon by all 4 towns.
Yeah.
There's no defaulting to that version of the statutory.
Mm-hmm.
The assessment method, the methods, the way they work, if we went to 100% statutory, essentially Amherst would get a very large increase. Back when we started this, that increase was over $500,000. And everybody in the community recognized that if that happened, they would not be able to hold up that end. They were adamant that they would not. And a lot of the voters did not want to do that because then the budget would be cut dramatically. And that was something that's why we've been trying to bring everybody towards it on a gradual, as Susie was saying, in a gradual way. And the hope is in a year or two, now they're close enough and we can cross that bridge and we can go to the statutory. So that's really been our philosophy. And yeah, a lot of voters don't like it and are upset with it. And I can certainly understand that. But there are also a lot of parents with kids in schools, and their kids will suffer. And I know the level of education at this regional school is not what it was when my kids were in it.
No.
We've seen big cuts in the last 10 years, very large cuts, number of programs. There has been a decrease in the student population, so you would expect a decrease, but these schools have large fixed costs as well. So that's been part of it. I do think that we need to go to 100%. I support it after what I just said. And just, I'm sorry that I threw this out now, but I just want everybody to know it's been on my mind for a long time. I come to meetings all the time, and I've been thinking about the cash, covering it with cash. And so it's kind of an idea I came up with a while ago. And so I wanted to bring that up. And as far as the transparency question goes, I would never suggest that we do anything that's transparent. How transparent something is, Les, really depends on how we present it to the town. So certainly we will let everybody know when we make a decision what drove that decision. I just want you to feel comfortable that we would do that.
I'm reassured. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm one of the one who's not comfortable with taking free cash and applying it in this way. I want to quote F. Ellen McKay and Kevin Rudin, who said you're going down a slippery slope if you start to do this, and it is sort of like an addiction. And the temptation will be every year to do it more and more. We also have huge expenses coming up: the school roof and the culvert. And the culvert's going to cost us, $500,000 at least. I think, Becky, you thought that maybe even more than that. And that free cash is going to get sucked up very, very quickly on those two big projects. And I think, and I do not think that we should go out and borrow money for either of them, because we've got the cash in hand. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to apply the cash to something that really needs it.
To your point, just one thing I want to reiterate, and maybe I might not have even said it. In my mind, the gap right now between statutory and the 45% method, it's $145,000 if I remember correctly. If we move the needle in the next fiscal year so that we're using a method that's more than 45%, then that 145 is going to go down. So the amount of free cash we would need might be 100 or 90,000. And I don't think we can take $220,000 of funding the budget this year and not use a portion of it next year, just go to zero, because the spike in the tax rate is going to be very difficult for a lot of people. I think we're going to have to gradually, we can lower the amount of cash we use to balance our budget, but I think we're going to have to gradually lower it, not just pull it all out. So my thought is, if that statutory method is about half of what we're doing now, it's a great step forward. I definitely agree with you. I think we can afford maybe $100,000 in 2022, given the amount of cash we have. I would not suggest that we continue this path for 4 or 5 years. It's definitely structural.
No, we can't do that.
You can't even do it for 3 without decimating the town.
Yeah.
Les,
You're muted.
Hear me now?
Yep.
yes.
I think this is a great discussion.
Okay. All great discussions must come to an end. Are we good with, has everybody got their points out there? We're getting close. We got 15 minutes. How about committee reports? Does anybody want to give an update on a committee? Jim, you look like you're sort of interested in talking about broadband.
Well, actually, I don't have any, there's very little to say. We're just futzing around with security locks and stuff like this. There's nothing really, the problem is that the meeting in which we discuss all of the current issues is next Wednesday. And so it's a little premature to try to give you a report when we haven't been able to sit down and talk through all the current issues. But as far as I can tell, things are going well. And we hope that big icy winter storms will stay away.
Cool. Melody, anything on personnel?
Yeah, I was just looking at the last minutes and we have a meeting coming up. It's next week, right, Becky? Yeah.
It'll be 21, the time is changing to 7 PM.
7. Yeah. So we elected officers. Ralph Armstrong is going to be the chair. And Peg Ross is the secretary. We discussed, we discussed basically new personnel for the fire and highway department. I think there's, and Becky, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there has to be negotiations for the let's see, sorry, this is really small.
Administrator.
Yeah, thank you. And wasn't it the highway?
Yeah, the highway
Yeah.
superintendent.
Yeah,
And
and right. And Ralph is going to be the personnel board liaison for the town administrator negotiation.
I
So,
think Peg took on the superintendent.
yes, the highway superintendent. So that's everything from personnel, and we'll have more after next week.
I have an announcement. You all weren't at the full select board meeting. We had a resignation tonight, kind of unexpected. Our police chief is changing his line of work, going into taking another opportunity. And so the select board will be working on new police chief hiring committee.
Wow.
Oh.
What's the effective date, Becky, on that?
March 6th.
Oh, wow.
But he is committed to being here for a transition beyond that point if needed. He won't be jumping in full time to the other opportunity until the beginning of May. So he's willing to stay on, potentially either in a part-time capacity or, but he's available to help us until we are back on our feet with a new police chief.
And
So
he can help recruit as well.
Yeah. So we shouldn't need to spend all that money on a new police cruiser, is that correct?
No, that's not correct. I'm just saying, I asked him about that. He said, no, we still need that cruiser. So he is not withdrawing the request.
Good try, Jim.
He can hunt for himself, too.
It probably won't be on town meeting floor. Who knows? And we still have not identified when town meeting will be.
It would be great to have him involved in the interview process.
Yeah.
Chief of Police from Lewin that just retired, maybe. I don't know if you read about him in the Globe, but maybe he's available. He was only getting $300,000 a year.
Get out of our price range.
That doesn't sound like the Bob I know.
A little less. Defund him, that's what I say.
If you hired him, you can just imagine the perks that all of you would be getting.
Les, it looked like you had your hand up a second ago.
Well, I was, Becky announced the news that I was going to pass on to Melanie.
Oh, okay.
To Melody, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's big news.
Yeah.
Bad news.
Not the kind we were looking for, but.
No.
Can you say where he's going, or is that private?
The way he turned it was a new opportunity, so.
Okay.
I'll field those questions, but don't hesitate to call him and ask him yourself. But he has said, we had that he's going to work on some community educational sessions before he leaves with his officers. So we're going to keep him busy while he's still here, and continue his community policing work and draw upon him to share more with the community. Susie?
Do you know if the more recent bill passed in Massachusetts will affect anything about this process in terms of who we could get or what we have to do with the staff we have? I don't really know the ins and outs of the legislation about policing.
I'm afraid I don't know yet either. I know there were two variables that were of concern to some officers. I can't remember. So I can't.
Certification.
I know he was following along about it because of course it's in his field. So maybe it would be good to know from him.
Good question.
Some of the interpretation of that law.
Yeah, definitely will ask. I know he is, part of the reason he was pushed hard to get Marcus into full-time training was there are going to be severe limits on what people with part-time training can do in the future. Tom Harding was talking about this years before, but it's actually coming to fruition, and I think it might be part of the bill Susie's referring to, which will make it much more difficult and expensive for a small town to finance a police department. Because the training requirements if they are increased, making full-time academy training required, it'll be much more difficult to find full-time officers with that training.
Are we going to? Are we going to be able to take a look at perhaps a joint police chief with Leverett, perhaps? Or it seems to me this is a perfect time to bring up that issue once again, because after all, I think Wendell is very happy with the arrangement that they currently have with Leverett, and that's working out well. Maybe this is the time to to give that a close look-see.
We've looked at sharing a police chief 5 times now.
Yeah, I know we have.
And there are a number of variables, including, the philosophy of the different communities. I know our officers have been doing mutual aid down in Wendell. I really want to explore that and look at that. Our agreements are with Leverett, not Wendell. So there's the arrangement between Wendell and Leverett is brand new. And I think it needs to be looked at and evaluated by all involved, and especially before we would have any discussion. I know there was some talk of Shutesbury joining with bringing New Salem on in a similar fashion. That's one concept that's been brought forward, but I think it leads to a lot of questions, but I think we have avenues to explore them and get help and resources to look at them.
Where does that happen, Becky? When you say avenues to explore, who sort of drives that process of exploring these different avenues?
Well, many times grant funds are used. Communities will go to FERCOG or to other advisors who have written up reports and analyze different communities. It's the process that Wendell and Leverett went through. They went to FERCOG, they studied their situation, they got a consultant to look at it from the financial aspect, as well as performance and services. I mean, one of the questions about Wendell and Leverett is distance, geography. I mean, for somebody in Leverett, on one side of Leverett, to be called to the other side of Wendell is up to an hour long. What does that mean for response, the responsive services? It means something very huge. So that's why they're not, when you roll out these concepts, the shared departments, you have to look at many aspects, and then just when you think you've got it all figured out, the other town votes first and votes you down. It's like,
I did see that that Leverett is going to start patrolling in Wendell, which is something they hadn't been doing, but under their extended agreement, they're going to start having patrols in Wendell. That was in the paper just last week.
So it'll be interesting. Wendell has never had patrols.
Right.
I've ridden my bike through Wendell for 20 years. I've never seen a cop in Wendell.
Not one once, George.
I did, but he wasn't wearing a uniform. So I think
Les.
he's trying to get your attention.
You know, I think, you know, the first question is, what are our needs for a police department here in Shutesbury? I mean, I think that's the first and leading question, and taking a hard look at that.
Yep. Susie.
And I believe the select board is a big part of this lead. We may get consultants and we may get some help figuring it out, but the select board, is that right, Becky? The select board is the main driver?
Yes, and the issue with even a discussion about sharing with another town at this point is the immediacy of our situation. I mean, we have, you know, less than 8 weeks. We have like 6 weeks until we're in a situation where we have no chief. That's
Just a
It's a
reminder,
good-
we had,
So it's a good time to do it.
when Tom,
not necessarily.
when Tom left, we had no chief for quite some time. And
Yeah.
he, you know, I heard the chief, Dan, say recently, nothing happens here. So, you know, that's just a simple fact that nothing does happen here. We do want to have police protection, but we do have to have a look at the situation and analyze, as Les said, what it is that we need and what we can afford to pay for before we just continue what we've been doing. It's an opportunity to review it.
Very much.
And I want to respond, Bob, to the comment about when Tom left, we had no chief for a long time. But what we did have when he left, we had an acting sergeant who was the officer in charge. And when she decided not to be the officer in charge, another officer was appointed, and that was Dan. But besides those two people, we had two part-time officers who both had been chiefs in their history. One was still an acting chief in Warwick, and the other had been the chief in Sunderland. Our current makeup of our force is not like that at all. Right now we have we have one officer in the academy who will just be graduating a few days before Dan leaves. We cannot make it, you know, and the other officer is less than full-time and does not have full-time academy training, which is not to say she's a fantastic officer, but to fill in as an acting chief, it takes quite a bit more potentially than we currently have. We're in a much slimmer situation, really looking at what's available in a chief very important, depending on what choice is made in the direction to go. But I think we have to keep our options open and go out to look, because other things will take quite a bit of time and have no guarantee of being a positive result. So it's a complicated situation, but it's what we have.
Okay, other committees, school, anything else on school, Susie?
No, they haven't met since the 17th of December, so I expect they'll meet on the 21st.
Okay. What about capital planning? Anything new on the capital planning front?
We haven't met since the last time that we reported on our deliberations. So we'll be meeting in, I think, on the 2nd or 4th of February, AJ, right? Early February.
Right.
Bob, do you have a list of requests right now?
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now that the three requests were,
Good night, Kristen.
the police department requested $50,000 for a car. The the library requested $25,000 for library building fund. And the school requested money, additional money for the sliding glass doors that are in the conference room. We did discuss that issue at our last meeting. There's a little confusion in my mind, at least, about what that means. But basically, we had paid or set aside $7,200 last year for that job. And apparently now the janitors who were going to do the installation are beset with other responsibilities related to their cleaning and moving stuff around for COVID related stuff. So they want to hire a professional to do the installation and they want additional money. So those are the three requests, the only three requests we have this year.
What about the roof?
The roof is not, the roof is, we don't have a proposal yet. Becky put out bids for engineering. And so Becky, that was not a capital
No,
request.
it was on the capital request list. The school brought it forward. It's waiting on information about how much it's going to cost.
Right, well,
mean,
it wasn't a capital request because there's no number, but it's obviously on everybody's mind at the school. We're well aware of it, but there's no request that was submitted for a sum.
Got it, got it.
But
Do
by
you,
the way, there's a study that has been put out to bid, and I don't know what the status of that is for the town. And that engineering study will develop specifications for a new roof, which then will have to go out and be bid. And hopefully that process can happen expeditiously and we can have a roof there sooner rather than later. But I don't know what the result of that engineering bidding process is. Becky would know.
The bids are just coming in. They just came in on Monday. So I have to get together and review them.
And what, the culvert also, right? Isn't culvert in that category too? It's sort of in the bid process and.
The
Or-
engineering firm was delayed by a Army Corps of Engineers permit that was just signed off on by the select board. So that too is, step by step waiting for actual numbers. So those are the two major requests that, we're not starting from scratch to evaluate like a new request.
Susie,
Has the finance committee had the discussion about what sources of money or how to finance these? Has that discussion happened?
No.
And when would it happen in a reasonable process? When would we make that recommendation?
Typically when you know how much the cost is going to be. That's what I see as the holdup in determining that. I guess you can always estimate, but knowing what you're really looking at would be helpful.
And does that recommendation of the financing go in front of town meeting? Is that how that goes?
There'll be a warrant article, yeah.
Yeah.
For each one.
but Becky or capital planning team, at this point right now, we still anticipate that a roof and a culvert will be part of the capital plan for this coming fiscal year.
They've been on the capital plan for a few years, yep.
Hopefully we'll be able to get that roof done this summer because that when school is out,
Yeah.
more than on the capital plan.
Ideal.
Well, I guess I used the wrong word. I said capital plan. I guess what I meant is for implementation in this coming fiscal year.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I see you there, Bob. Any other comments, any other topics that aren't on the agenda that we should be addressing, or are we good to go?
I just wanted to report on the bus contract. So they did not yet have the December bill. That's what we were waiting for. The bills through November, which he referred to as the first third of the year, are $22,860, which is a $6,300 discount compared to the budget. So the savings to date is $6,300.
That's for this school year?
Yep. September through November.
And going forward for the rest of the fiscal year, do you expect that to continue? Or,
I'm uncertain how actually running buses is going to impact the situation. Because December had more buses running than the earlier months. So I'm waiting to understand how that plays out, whether it's more or less of those savings.
okay.
And there are going to be additional grades, presumably coming back for hybrid learning over the course of the next months. So
Yeah.
I assume that means there are going to be more bus routes as well.
Yep. But we don't know how many.
Right.
Yep. Susie?
Do we know if Amherst is doing any hybrid or is it all still remote?
I don't know.
They are planning, I think they delayed going back to school, but they're still planning on it. I think they delayed it by 2 weeks is what I read.
Yeah, the secondary schools are all remote. And
Presently,
no-
but
and
AJ, am I
no-
correct? Are they going back?
No,
Okay.
no foreseeable
Yeah.
plans to send them back.
Yeah, I
So
don't think the contracts could be.
That's the middle and high school, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's the regional school. So is that number that you quoted, 6,000? Does that include the regional or is that just the elementary bill?
Just
That's
elementary.
elementary.
Okay.
The elementary busing is the only thing that we see in our budget.
Okay.
Because the bus contract itself is embedded in the regional, and we can ask for what that might be, but it's going to flow through the regional budget.
Yep,
This-
but
this
there
is-
would be savings at the regional level.
Yeah, there would be similar savings at the regional level based on the same MOU that the bus company wrote with the region.
Got it.
So it looks like probably about 18,000. I don't know if it might turn out to be around 18, 20,000, but we need more information. But at least it's a start.
I think I misspoke. There is a small number of like special population students that at least earlier in the year were being served in person at the schools. It was not a large number though.
And it's the same at the Shutesbury Elementary. The special needs students are in session, and then the preschool, which I guess has some, but not all but not everyone had been in. But we've had students in the school since September.
Okay, thanks, Becky. I have nothing else showing on the agenda. We meet again next Tuesday with the all boards meeting. And then the following Tuesday, we have our regular meeting.
Yep,
Meet with the
All
assessor,
board-
and the collector during that meeting.
on the 26th.
Yep.
All boards meeting is at 6 o'clock.
It's 6:30 to 8, I think.
Oh, okay.
I think select board is meeting at 5:30 to 6, and then it'll be in all boards, 6:30 to 8.
Who's on the agenda for the next FinCom meeting? Tax collector and
And treasurer,
Assessor.
I'm sorry, assessor, sorry.
And didn't we talk earlier this evening that we would put something else on that agenda?
Or towns prep.
Level funding and level services.
Yeah. And then the four-town meeting we're thinking about talking about on February 2nd with the select board.
Yes.
Also. Yeah.
What time would the February 2nd meeting be? 7? Okay.
Yeah, we have pretty steady line of meetings coming up, and then that's followed shortly with the regional, the 4-town meeting. That's following Saturday.
6th.
And then the next Tuesday, we meet with the treasurer and the accountant. On
So
the
how
ninth,
pro,
the 9th, Tuesday, the 9th.
how appropriate is it that we're going to be meeting to talk about the regional assessment on Groundhog Day?
Exactly.
Ooh.
You must have done that on purpose.
You're smart.
Anything else we need to cover tonight? Does anybody want to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Okay, go through the George.
Carbonitis, aye.
Pelletier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Closure, aye.
Walton, aye. All right.
Didn't miss the Celtics game tonight.
Yeah, are we gonna miss 3 games now? It's looking like at least 3 games we're gonna miss.
I think tomorrow night too.
Yeah.
Is that
That's
the
what they're
third, is that
saying.
the third one?
3 in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were looking good too.
My mom's gonna hate that.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Oh, well, they
It's
must
my entertainment.
Yep. Oh, well.
Take care, everyone.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Great night.
Happy New Year.
You all have a good night.
Good night, Jim.
Good night.